Okay, so let's kick off. First of all, thanks a lot for early joining this podcast or this call with us together. So I will just briefly introduce myself. My name is Maarten Keisers. I'm the Clouds and Cybersecurity Advisory Lead at Fujitsu. And together with my colleague Frederick from VMware, we're partnering up in order to give you an insight of how to go forward with the new hot stuff. It's called Zero Trust in this data center environment, or we're talking about virtual network, how to apply that, and going to multi-cloud. Okay, so I would like to briefly share you the. Let's see how I can get that to the next one. Here we go. Yeah. So the agenda of today is, first of all, we're keen to share you some of the challenges we see in the market. So on a daily basis, we're out there feeling the pain. So ourselves, but also you as a customer, you have some challenges which we see going to that cloud. Okay. For the last 10 years, we've seen that a lot of corporations have mainly focused on the technology itself. Okay, where I think now the focus is more on the data and the application itself, and where it should need to go. Okay, so that's Zero Trust is basically the user doesn't mind where it's actually landing, and that's something we, VMware and Fujitsu, we can make sure that that happens to you. So how we can implement that? First of all, that new model into that data center approach, and Frederick will give you a more insight on the virtual network itself. Okay, and most overall the visibility, because once you go there, you need to really know where exactly it's landing, and it's landing safe. I mean, that's a bit of the key. So some few words about Fujitsu. When I recently joined, I knew a lot of people know that we had a German relationship with Siemens in Belgium, but it goes way back. So actually the G in Fujitsu is actually Siemens, so it dates really back. So we're definitely we're Japanese, and we're number one in Japan, but we got a great footprint all over Asia, but also in Europe. Okay, so I think we earned our stripes together with VMware in the data center. So we have a lot of experience helping customers with private data centers. And from that experience, we now embrace that new model. So where the VPN is dead, we're not bringing customers from point A to B, but we are more flexible. And for what agile in application was, the idea that we have is to bring agile to infrastructure. I mean, that's a bit of the key. Now, we can't do that alone, so that's why we have about 30,000 partners out there. VMware is, especially in that data center space, is a key partner. And as I said, we make a lot of products, hardware, etc. But on that software level, we also recognize partners like VMware that help us out to make that success happen. Um, with COVID-19 as well, the digitization process has extended. It kept us alive. If you look at the Nikkei index, we have a diverse company. So we are still doing refrigerators. We have a huge R&D department. We do airco units. So we are a big technology company still out there with a diverse setup where we kept quite sustainable, alive and kicking, and that's for sure. So where do we make the difference? Also in Europe, is we got 24/7, let me say, helping centers or delivery centers, multiple languages out there. So in Europe, it would be Lisbon, Spain, Poland, but even better. So the pan-European, a lot of Belgians are using that pan-European setup in Russia. Why? Because it's the challenge we have in Belgium is not the technology, because it's all out there. It's trying to find the people. Mainly in cybersecurity, it's just a big hassle. We know that. And lucky for us, we have still in Poland and Russia quite a bunch, a proper army ready to advise you and to help you. Now, looking at the challenges, I mean, this photo explains it all. Two photos from 2005 pre-COVID, 2013. Could you imagine what happened with COVID-19? And everybody was working from home. So working for a digitization company, well, we never felt a hiccup. So it's not only the technology that needed to be ready, but also the culture. And it was already on board. So for us, there was not a difference beside the fact that we couldn't go to the coffee machine at the office. But now the office is back open, still quite empty, but people are at least allowed to come to the office again. So we quite helped a lot of customers doing that. Now, another thing that is popping up quite recently in Belgium, but already it's all started again. If you go back to what happened in Natanz with Stuxnet, what the Americans invented, What lately happened also with colonial pipelines, it's not the direct impact that is damaging, but is the indirect impact. And so in the States, a lot of people were queuing up to get petrol. Myself and Fujitsu itself were very active on the X Ghent Kortrijk, where there are a lot of production companies as well that are really requesting now these kind of services. Now, there are a lot of corporations marketing it. Now, we can prove that we have the right references out there, and I think it's quite costly as well. You need to really understand the technology. So eat your own dog food. I mean, we're still one of the few that have still technology companies, technology factories available in Europe producing desktops. I mean, most of them are out of Asia. We still have Asian hubs, of course, but also in Europe, we're producing it and also extra controlling it. So what we see is the flavor from going from OC IT to Purdy on an OT level. And last but not least, I think there's brilliant technology out there. That's why we're reaching out with VMware. Nevertheless, that's where we can help is staffing. And we're talking to customers that are saying we've got 5 people managing our system admin stuff, our backup, etc. 2 of these guys are in burnout. I mean, it's we can't find replacement, etc. So where we can help is that we're also a separate recruiting company. It's a separate NV SPRL. Where we will find a local guy with a local slang, so it's a West Flams guy that can jump in, and then the back end, the rest of the 4 is more like a circulation of 20 people in the back end near shore that helps you out from Russia or from Poland, Spain, or Portugal. Now, the challenges we see is that the customers that we talk to, most of them, they have already started with cloud exercises, mainly driven by DevOps teams, and the IT management itself that wants to keep ahead is under pressure. Okay, so how can you speed up? But once you speed up, you need to make sure that you have all the compliancy settings in space. So that's not always easy. So where do we need to start? And I think there is exactly where our 2 companies can really guide you in order to help you in that process. So what we've seen is that 10, 15 years ago, everybody was focused on technology. So they had a server, they had, all CapEx, they needed an extra backup system. So they really tested out all the systems. Then they went to a virtualization system. They might have already changed to an OpEx model in the private cloud. And then all at the end ended up in a pay-as-you-go model. Okay, that's a completely different bargain nowadays. So what we see now is that kind of the VPN is dead, and COVID-19 really accelerated that because it's not the point to bring people from point A to B, but it's rather, and that's why I brought the analogy of parachuting. Base jumping was literally a 40 of me 10 years ago, and it was a semi-death experience that I had there that day, and I'll explain you. It's a bit later. So it's the same, like you don't know where you're gonna land. So you got your data, you got your context, you're jumping, and you don't know where you're gonna land. So the 2 people in behind, that's VMware and that's Fujitsu, that we can redirect you and help you to find the direction. Okay. Why zero trust? And I'm talking to 2011 when I had that really bad jump. Okay, I had a twister. For those that did it ever, I mean, believe me, it's not recommendable. So you have a 60 seconds drop in 30 seconds. I had a failure, so I saw I had a failure. So I had 5 seconds to decide what I needed to do to pull the reserve parachute. So you would imagine that I would be very nervous at that moment. Well, actually, I was not. You just stick to the procedures. Okay, you're very calm. You know exactly what you need to do. That's the same with a cyber attack. Okay, at that moment, you have to have your fire drill plan ready, and you need to pull that reserve parachute. Now, why zero trust? And so it's zero trust is all about the identity. Okay, the mistake I made that day was that I didn't take my own parachute with me, and I rented one from the airfield. Okay, so I didn't bring my own identity. So that's a bit of the problem. Okay, so now I learned, and believe me, I will never let somebody else pack my parachute. Now, when I went down and I was trying to find pre-GDPR, of course, 2011, the guy that packed my parachute, the airfield instructor didn't give me that name. Lucky, I think, that he didn't give my name, because otherwise I would have reacted impulsively. But anyway, that's a bit of the analogy with cloud solutions. So the clue is that it all goes through a reverse proxy. Okay, as a user, you don't know, you're going to be redirected to the best spot available on an economic, price level, technical best solution for you. Okay, so how does it look on a technical land field? Okay, if we go in, so we're more data driven and people driven. So VMware is definitely data driven. We are more people driven centric. So the people are important. There we can help. So what we do is we analyze first of all your application, your context. Okay, which applications are ready to retire, to retain, to modernize, and finally to migrate. Because even if you're working on an old system, it doesn't make any sense to push it to a cloud. I mean, so keep it faded. You can fade it out, for example, on a legacy system, and actually you don't need to care where it is hosted. I mean, it's our story. Where VMware comes in is they deliver great tooling in place to extend that data center capabilities, okay, that we have, and to uh, procure the right kind of resources, technology-wise, in order to push that content through, even with very sophisticated AI stuff. But what they do is like, if you look in the past, it was going to these cloud models, everybody had a catalog and they need to fill in a lot of stuff, still very technical. Now it's quite automatic done as well. It's all with chatbots. It's a sophisticated system in the backend that procures the right kind of content to any kind of cloud out there. So where can we help? Where did we gain that experience? Well, we have kind of springboards that was recently also announced at almost a year ago at Ignite with AWS and with Microsoft. So what it is, we have built that experience going to the cloud, okay, going to build these data sets, because going to the cloud is actually building a node data center for you. Okay, that's a bit of the idea. So a lot of infrastructure as code has been needed to be ready, all these connections with all these tools, firewalls, etc. So all this exercise that we didn't throw it in the bin. Okay, we collected that information, repackaged it. So in an open source model, the only thing what we offer is kind of a renewal fee at the end of the year. And with all the customers, what we are doing, that we're capturing that know-how and put that in one, let me say, secret sauce called Springboard. Okay. So on top of that, as I said, VMware is focusing on the technology and the data, how they can help us deliver that. On the other hand, where can we help? And we really feel the pain there. On a daily basis, people are coming to us. Okay, find the expert. Okay, I've got 5 people now doing that, and 2 of them are in burnout. And I really want to focus on delivering IT service to the business and not acting like an HR manager. So Fujitsu, what can you do? Okay, so we come in with a local Antwerpian guy or a guy from Liège or a guy from Ypres that can take care of your business locally. He can go on holiday, he can go sick as well, and then we have in the back end a 24/7 model ready in order to make the dépannage available for you. Now, if you talk about security, if you add security on top, if you could start from scratch, I mean, I think with the 2 of us, VMware and ourselves, you could be quite happy, because, and that's the reason why we're reaching out to VMware, because over the years, they've acquired a couple of solutions out there in the market that they have kind of a Swiss knife in order to guide you on. Okay, sometimes it's not reality, so that we need to go in with a flavored approach. Okay, but I see it like going to the doctor when you're sick. Okay, the doctor will tell you, okay, cybersecurity it's a scattered market. So every week there are new solutions that are popping up from Tel Aviv. So it's going to the doctor. He would say, okay, yeah, you need to take 2,000 pills, right? I mean, we are taking another approach. We say, okay, we're gonna take you on a diet. So we're gonna make a selection also based on your budget, because if you're talking about cybersecurity, it can be going very fast. Okay. So of course, if you go to the cloud, challenges are getting more and more, etc. And you need to reflect, because if you are putting all the features, it's going to be very costly. So that's why we have a close contact with most of the cloud players out there in the market, those that have the SaaS application, etc. But we come in between to also make sure that the economic survivable reason to push things to the cloud are realistic. Okay. Then, and that's also, as I said, the same side. So understand the risk, that's important. And then also the responsibilities. So mainly we're here below the water, but if you want us to go above the waterline, I mean, to manage your network, you're going into your IAM, because we see a lot of people that, lately last week I talked to a customer that said, my IAM squad was not touched for the last 2 years. Fujitsu, can you kickstart that IAM practice? And it's a continuous base. So we don't offer CVs, we offer the responsibility. So it is tough to find guys. it's also our problem to do that. Okay, so that you can focus on the top layer, on your data, bringing your data to your customers. Okay. So in terms of responsibility, it's a matrix as well, where we gonna split that together with you, and we have, of course, the different variations. Where now, of course, the latest one you can add this, which is called ZTAS, Zero Trust as a service, which is adding on top of that. And then all the different kind of flavors in security is out there. So we have one holistic view. Okay, do we say that we are expert in all of them? No, I mean, because we're reaching out to an ecosystem of multiple countries where we stack these kind of skills. But of course, depending on countries, for example, we have in Belgium for Fujitsu, we have the blockchain hub for entire Europe is based out of here. Cybersecurity is more in the UK, but that doesn't mean that I can engage with offensive guys here locally. Yeah? Don't want to bore you with this slide, but this offers kind of the consultancy approach, advisory approach that we are presenting from a security angle, especially if you go to these cloud setups. And we can't do that alone. So one of the trends we see, for example, you will always, for the last 5-6 years, you could come to us and to say, okay, manage my security, monitor my security. Now we see kind of a new trend in the market where new tooling is popping up that we're seeing that SIEM is kind of disappearing, and we're talking about seamless SOC projects, and yeah, looking at the core data center, we need to make sure that we facilitate in an agile way your infrastructure in the best possible way with the limited budget you have, and on top of that, make sure that you find your way through all this different kind of technology out there. So why Fujitsu together with VMware? I would say we're tight partners. We're 40 years in that business. We have a lot of experience in that data center. So we do that for some large European customers, even out of Belgium. From a security point of view, you can't be the best in everything. On the other hand, we have kind of a Swiss knife that's good enough to make sure that we keep your IT running, and that's the clue of the story. Yeah? So the question is up to you. Are you ready? So the water is coming in. So if the dikes break, what do you have to keep you floating? Are you going to use that parachute to help you to get there? Or are you just going to break all the cables out, or break the glass and pull out all the cables with an economic impact? So now I leave the word to Frederick, who will explain you a little bit more about that virtual network. Frederick, I don't know if you can. Yeah, okay, superb. Perfect.
Yeah, I've
There
got
you go.
control, and I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, fine.
Perfect. So yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Frederick Verduyckt. I am a system engineer at VMware, responsible for everything network and security from the Belgium and Luxembourg region. So I'd like to take the next couple of minutes to discuss some of the tooling that we use to enable a partner like Fujitsu to achieve their goals, as Maarten just put forward, as part of that journey to the clouds, because that's where the challenges lie. That's where we get the most of the questions. Where do we start? How do we start? What do we use? Right. So I want to take some time and explain how we see that journey as well. Just to set the scene a bit, still a lot of our customers, well, not really our customers, but the market in general sees VMware as an infrastructure provider, which is partly true. But over the last more than a decade now, we have evolved to a true network provider as well. So our capabilities no longer lie just in the infrastructure based on the hypervisor technology we have, but we can also extend that technology through network and security services over different clouds, over branches, to IoT devices, to the end users, all with security and connectivity in mind, obviously. And a glue of that, as part of the tooling, is VMware NSX. VMware NSX in itself is a layer, a framework, if you want, of services that provides or that brings network and security services to the table, like switching, like routing, very rudimentary services, but has built-in security based on firewall technology, on next-generation firewall technology, I should say, because we also bring anti-malware, IDS, IPS capabilities into that mix. We top that off with load balancing and web application firewalling, all potentially tied together depending on the needs of the customer, depending on the type of cloud you're building out in a service mesh-like infrastructure. That's typically what we do inside a data center. Whether that data center is on-premise or cloud-based doesn't really matter for VMware. But what about connectivity between those different clouds? Then we have our SD-WAN platform. It was already mentioned by Maarten earlier. So in terms of SASE, secure access and secure edge services, as well as connectivity between those clouds with the proper visibility. And once you have visibility, you can provide the proper security on top of that. All of that is what NSX entails, right? So NSX is becoming an umbrella term for all of these type of services. Now, I've split my presentation in two chapters. The first one is all about visibility. And once you have visibility, once you understand what it is that you're trying to protect or potentially move towards a cloud, then you can start thinking about enforcing security around that or within those silos that you're potentially building. Right. So for the visibility part, we're using a tool called VMware vRealize Network Insight, or VRNI for short. The reason this product exists is because we have established that when building new cloud infrastructures through overlay networking or linking different cloud infrastructures together, whether those are your own data centers, which can also be considered your private clouds, or public clouds in terms of the Azures or the Amazons of this world, we have established that the legacy tooling that was in place, stuff like a NetFlow analyzer, stuff like packet captures or other network management tools, were simply not sufficient. They only captured a part of the connectivity or a part of the security or a part of that specific cloud. Only the on-prem visibility, for instance, but linking that to all the capabilities of public cloud infrastructure was becoming a challenge. Not only that, as we see, and this is what Maarten obviously explained as well, we see a tremendous move towards public clouds. And even if you have the best tooling for your traditional IT infrastructure, that tooling simply will not be sufficient enough to have complete end-to-end visibility the more you move this dial to the right. So the more you go to public clouds, you will see different resources, different capabilities, different ways of looking on how things are connecting to one another, and of course then in order to protect it as well. We also have established that we are talking to different personas in certain organizations, and that's true for 99% of the organizations out there. When it comes to being able to provide a cloud infrastructure, we rarely see a cloud team. We often see still a siloed approach. Somebody does the networking, somebody does the infrastructure, and then another person or team is responsible for the applications, and then yet another team is responsible for everything that has to do with security. Now, through technology, through this tooling, we try to bring these personas together around the table so that they can discuss what is relevant. We do this for the network administrator, being able to provide visibility from both an overlay network, a logical infrastructure that's still supporting an underlay, that's supported on top of an underlay, I should say, and provide that end-to-end visibility. Everything that has to do with connectivity between those different sites, between branches, between different clouds, something that the network administrator is very interested in. And then, of course, the performance of the network in terms of latency and how to optimize that once you know is a key factor of making decisions for a network administrator. Then the infra team or the cloud administrator team is more concerned on how do I leverage the cloud and how can I potentially migrate applications from one cloud to another, and how do I connect and secure all those clouds together. And when it comes to security, of course, the persona that's responsible for security typically is the network security administrator. And he's more concerned about security planning, potentially also about micro-segmentation, having the ability to segment each workload from each other workload, or complete clouds or complete silos within a cloud between each other. And then, of course, as an umbrella over all of that sits everything that has to do with auditing and compliancy. That's where tooling comes in to make these personas' life as easy as possible. Right? We see this as a journey, a 5-step plan, if you like. First thing that we're going to do is assess your current environment. Right? Typically, this is your on-prem environment, because if the goal is to go towards the cloud, then you're obviously not yet in the cloud. We do this through VRNI. This is one of those tools that we use to achieve such an assessment. And the goal of that assessment is to properly understand the boundaries of an application. Not just the boundaries of an application, but also dependencies of an application. An application typically does not sit alone. It relies on different aspects within your data center, shared services, simple stuff like DNS, NTP, but other stuff like shared databases and CRM applications, for instance. Once you understand how your application works and interact with other applications, you can start thinking about security, putting firewalling rules in place that only the protocols, the flows that are required by that application are allowed in and outside your data center. And once that type of segregation is in place, you can start thinking about bringing that security to a higher level and adding intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, anti-malware into the mix. If you can do that for one application, you can do that for multiple applications. And that's what we mean by the rinse and repeat, right? So once you know, you repeat the process, you monitor what you're doing. It's super easy to troubleshoot once you have those guardrails in place. Right, so focusing on the first step, discovering the applications, analyzing the applications. And I've just brought one example, because we have a limited set of time. I can talk about this all day if you want. So if you're interested, please reach out. But just one example. One application here in the middle, represented by the light blue hexagon, and we visualize the flows between other applications. So this beehive structure that you see, this is a representation of all the applications that we found in a certain environment. We can do this, manually. If you tell us what your applications are, then you make our job very easy. Of course, you want to automate it as much as possible. That's why we could use a CMDB or existing security tags or existing security groups in your environment, but also through machine learning, right? So once we see the traffic, we can put AI on the traffic and try to determine what those applications are from our point of view as well. The end goal is what you see here, right? So it's the relationship between other applications in your data center, the dependencies, if you like, because that plays a vital role in what you're going to do, not just in terms of security, because now it's super easy to start securing that, you know what is going on, but also in your path to the cloud, in your journey to the cloud. Because if it is your intention to pick up this light blue hexagon and put that in the cloud, you need to know those dependencies, because that still means that if that component is running in the cloud, it's still going to contact back those dependencies that perhaps are still sitting in your on-prem data center. So then the exercise becomes, what do I manage or migrate first? Do I migrate them in bulk, or do I do that application by application? The key, of course, is now you know. Now you're playing with what you know. And of course, as soon as we have that network information, it just doesn't stop at the application. There's still a network to consider. And since we now have that information, we can start thinking about, show us the round trip times, show us perhaps abnormal flow detections. Are we seeing peaks or less consumption of a specific application? And what's the typical latency compared to running this application on-prem or in the cloud? Right? So all of that is visible through this tooling. So once we know that, once we have those boundaries in place and those dependencies are known, we can start thinking about the second part of this presentation, which is all about the enforcement. Just like Maarten said, we try to achieve a zero trust approach. And what's the zero trust approach from a practical point of view? If you start doing stuff like firewalling, for instance, that means that you're going to block everything. You basically are adopting a whitelist approach, right? A whitelist approach means that you block everything. Practically, this means that the last rule in your firewall will be a catch-all rule and block everything, and that you're just going to allow what you know, what you trust. And what you trust is what we just made visible. That's the applications we just found and that you are using and consuming as part of your infrastructure. So when we think about the enforcement, VMware NSX comes into play, and especially the VMware NSX cloud component is critical here. Why is that? Because we did a study, not just us, but out of that study, we have learned that on average, organizations leverage not just one cloud, not just Azure or just another. They use different clouds, right? This can be a choice based on a cost perspective or on a high availability perspective, not putting all eggs in one basket, basically. The fact is, if you have that many clouds to manage, you also have to consider the security controls that are in place at such a cloud. What do I mean by that? Once you know on-prem how your applications are working, again, what the dependencies are and what the relationship is between other applications, then you know how to secure it. But once you pick up that application and you put it on a public cloud, then you're confronted with the security controls of that specific cloud. If you do the same to another cloud, it's yet another set of security controls, right? So what we see is because of that technology, because of that diverse availability of different clouds, we see again silos popping up, and that's something we want to avoid. We see people managing a private cloud as from a legacy point of view, but IT embracing the public cloud, and then we see developers embracing yet another set of public cloud tools, specifically for containers, for instance, and then other lines of business within an organization using yet other clouds because that helps them achieve their goals much faster. We want to have a uniform layer to manage all of this at once. And that's where NSX comes into play. NSX does exactly that. NSX is able to not only provide the visibility across all those clouds, so you still get to see who gets to talk to who, but also provides a consistent security policy across those same clouds. And then it doesn't matter anymore where your application sits because you can rest assured that it's properly connected from one point, but more importantly, properly secured from another point, right? So NSX as a solution provides a consistent network and security layer across basically any cloud. We do this for security. So that means that an application is now tied or married to a single security policy. And then, as I said before, it doesn't matter where you put that application. We provide all the way up to layer 7. So it's not just layer 4 firewalling. We also use controls like App ID and distributed IDS, distributed IDPS. And we can do that in two ways, either NSX natively enforces the traffic based on the policy you put in place, or we can also do this in a cloud enforced way. What does that mean? That means that NSX then becomes basically a translator. You define how your application needs to be secured, and NSX can translate that logic, that intelligence to the cloud-based controls, right? So if you put something on Azure, we will translate that to security groups that Azure understands, and the other way around for Amazon or Google or whatever cloud you want to leverage there. So again, it doesn't matter what that cloud is. Security, of course, in the context of this presentation is hypercritical, but we also do this for other network controls, not just firewalling or additional security on top of that. We also do that for the entire OZ layer, basically. So switching, routing, load balancing, VPN. You could consider NSX as a box of Legos, and you get to decide what you want to build. The only thing you need to leverage are the resources that are available on those clouds, and you're good to go. So to summarize things, we've discussed the tooling, right? We've discussed together with Fujitsu the way towards a cloud. And I think you're in good hands with a company and a partner like Fujitsu. They really understand what VMware can bring to the table in terms of technology, but they have that added luxury of understanding the people and the processes as well. But from a tooling perspective, what VMware NSX and what VMware, but particularly NSX, is all about is connecting all of these services, workloads, users, and different clouds together, always with security in mind. And with that, we can open up for questions.